The mirror's whisper. It started the night the mirror called my name. Not in the way voices echo from your own mind when you're tired or frightened, but in a whisper that slid through the room like cold smoke. Eli, it said, soft and deliberate, as if someone were standing just behind the glass. I froze where I stood, my reflection trembling faintly in the moonlight. I lived alone, yet the whisper had shape, tone, and a cruel sort of knowing. My first instinct was to laugh it off, but something inside me, something deep and unsettled, wouldn't let me. That mirror had always unnerved me. I'd found it weeks ago at an antique shop on the edge of town, carved with curling silver patterns and a faint rose tint to the glass. The shopkeeper had warned me half-jokingly, "It doesn't like to be ignored." I thought she meant it as a charm, a little mystery to sell, an old thing. But since I brought it home, my reflection seemed different. Slightly softer, as though the glass remembered a face that wasn't mine. That night, I couldn't look away. My reflections seemed to breathe when I didn't. Her lips moved faintly before mine did. Her eyes, my eyes, held a wet shimmer of emotion I didn't understand. She looked like me, and yet more delicate, more deliberate, as though a woman were trapped beneath the skin of my reflection, desperate to surface. I stepped closer. My breath fogged the glass. And then I saw it, the faint outline of lipstick, crimson and perfect, appearing on my reflection's lips though mine were bare. I stumbled backward, the old floorboards groaning under my feet, and the whisper came again, clearer now. "You wanted to know who you really are, didn't you?" The air turned heavy, dense, almost alive. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I tried to turn away, but my reflection didn't follow. She stayed facing forward, head slightly tilted, eyes locked on me with pity, or maybe hunger. The crimson lips parted once more. "Then let me show you," she said. For a moment, the world tilted, like gravity had forgotten its direction. I blinked, and my surroundings blurred. My own reflection reached out, fingertips pressing against the inside of the mirror's surface. And for the first time in my life, I felt warmth from the glass, a pulse, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The whisper turned to a hum, a low vibration that filled my bones. My vision dimmed, my skin prickled, and something deep inside me, the part one never dared to speak of, the part that lingered whenever I looked at women with envy instead of desire, began to stir. It felt like the mirror wasn't cursing me. It was calling me home. But before I could move, the glass cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread from the center, slicing across her face, my face, until her expression split into 1,000 distorted smiles. I reached out, trembling, and felt the world fade to black. When I woke up, the mirror was whole again. Only my reflection wasn't. Her eyes, not mine. When I came to, the morning light was already crawling through the curtains, dull and gray, like the sky itself didn't want to be awake. I was on the floor, the mirror still hanging on the wall, spotless as if nothing had happened. My head ached. My throat felt dry. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at my reflection, waiting for the whisper, the warmth, the cracks, anything to prove the night before wasn't a dream. But the mirror stayed silent. Except it wasn't me looking back anymore. Not exactly. The difference was subtle at first, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't searching for it. My cheekbones seemed higher, my eyes softer, more almond-shaped, with lashes that looked too dark to be natural. My reflection smiled faintly, though I hadn't moved a muscle. I blinked.
"So, did she?"
But a second too late, like she was thinking about it first. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I must have hit my head. But deep down, something twisted and small inside me whispered the truth I didn't want to believe. I've seen her before. In dreams. Always in mirrors, windows, polished metal. Her eyes following me wherever reflections lived. The same gentle face, the same sadness. I used to wake from those dreams with a strange ache of longing, like missing someone you've never met. I never told anyone. How do you explain missing a version of yourself that doesn't exist? I stood and looked closer. "Who are you?" I whispered, voice shaking. My reflection tilted her head, mirroring me with a strange patience. Then, ever so slightly, she mouthed, The words chilled me more than any ghost ever could. I reached out to touch the mirror again. My fingers trembled against the glass, cold this time, lifeless. But as soon as my skin met it, the faintest warmth pulsed back, a single heartbeat that wasn't mine. And for the briefest second, I felt her sadness. Heavy and infinite. That was when I noticed the lipstick stain again, crimson, perfect, on her lips but not on mine. Only this time, as I stepped back, my lips tingled. I ran my thumb across them and froze. A faint red mark came away on my skin. I stumbled to the bathroom, heart hammering, and splashed water on my face. But no matter how hard I scrubbed, the tint wouldn't fade. My reflection in the smaller mirror above the sink blinked back at me, eyes wide, skin pale, and then her mouth curled into that same soft smile, her voice slithering through the silence like silk. "Stop fighting it, Eli. You were never meant to be him." I screamed and slammed the mirror door shut. For hours, I avoided every reflective surface in my apartment. The screen of my phone, the metal of the kettle, even the dark sheen of the window. Every glimmer of reflection made my stomach twist. But by afternoon, something stranger began to happen. My body ached, my skin buzzed, and I felt a pull, deep and steady, toward the mirror in my room. It wasn't fear anymore. It was longing. That night, I dreamed again. I was standing before the same mirror, only now, she was on my side of the glass, smiling, brushing her hair behind her ear, whispering in a voice that was both mine and not mine. Almost there. When I woke, the lipstick was gone, but her eyes were still in mine. The skin between us. I stopped trusting my reflection after that night. I covered every mirror in my apartment with towels and bedsheets, even the glossy surfaces of picture frames. But reflections have a way of finding you, even when you try to hide. They live in puddles, phone screens, silverware, tiny glimpses of something you can't fully escape. By the third day, I was seeing her everywhere. The faint outline of her face in the kettle. The shape of her lips in the reflection of my phone. Always watching. Always waiting. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt her there, just behind me, breathing in rhythm with mine. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night with the taste of lipstick on my lips again, or a faint perfume in the air, soft and floral, unfamiliar.
My own scent had changed, too.
I used to smell like aftershave and cheap coffee. Now my pillows smelled like rose powder. I started keeping notes. A desperate attempt to prove I wasn't losing my mind. Day 1. Reflection delayed. Lipstick appeared. Whispered name. Day 2. Voice clearer. Face softer. Mirror pulse real. Day 3. Perfume. Lip tint. Changing eyes. Day 4. I didn't even finish the 4th line before I noticed something strange about my handwriting. It was different. Rounder. Neater. Feminine. I dropped the pen. My chest felt tight. The skin on my arms prickled, goosebumps rising even though the room was warm. I looked down at my hands. My fingers looked longer, narrower than before. My nails had a faint pink tint, not paint, but natural, like blood humming too close to the surface. I stumbled toward the bathroom, forgetting I'd covered the mirror there. I tore the towel away before I could think twice. And there she was. Her face, not mine, staring back at me with an expression halfway between sorrow and apology. My body felt heavy, the air thick like syrup. I raised a trembling hand. She mirrored it perfectly this time. Except, when my palm met the glass, I felt warmth again. Stronger. More human. And then, I watched in horror as her fingertips began to sink through. Not the mirror breaking, no, it yielded, like water. Her hand slid through as though reality were a thin layer of film. I stumbled back, heart pounding, but her fingers brushed my wrist before I could move away. They were warm.
Real.
Too real. I felt it then. The cold rush spreading through my veins, starting where she'd touched me. It burned and froze all at once, a strange sensation of being both pulled and rewritten. I gasped, grabbing at my arm, but the skin there shimmered faintly, pale and smooth. "Stop," I shouted. "What are you doing to me?" Her lips moved, but no sound came. Only a whisper in my mind. "Setting you free." The room spun. My vision blurred at the edges. For a heartbeat, I wasn't sure who was on which side of the glass. My reflection leaned forward, eyes wide and glistening with tears. My tears? Her tears? I couldn't tell anymore. And then the warmth vanished. Her hand withdrew, the mirror sealing itself like it had never opened. I stumbled backward, clutching my wrist. A faint red mark remained where she'd touched me, shaped like her fingertips. That night, I didn't sleep.
Couldn't.
Every few minutes, I'd glance toward the covered mirror, waiting for a sound, a whisper, anything. But nothing came. Just silence. And yet, somehow, I knew she wasn't gone. She was inside. The woman in the glass. The next few days passed in a fog. I went to work, but my coworkers seemed to look at me strangely. I caught one of them, Jared, staring at my face in confusion, like he couldn't quite place what was different. When I asked him what was wrong, he smiled awkwardly and said, "Nothing, Eli. You just look rested."
Different, maybe.
"Did you change something?" I laughed it off. What else could I say? "Yeah, Jared, I think my reflection is trying to turn me into someone else." But even as I joked, the unease in my gut grew heavier. I could feel the mirror calling to me whenever I was home. It wasn't sound, it was more like a pull, a heartbeat that matched my own. Every night, no matter how much I tried to resist, I'd find myself standing before it again, my breath shallow, my heart pounding as though the glass itself were alive. And each night, she looked a little more solid. The changes in me were getting harder to ignore. My jawline softened. My voice trembled when I spoke, uncertain, as if trying to find a register it wasn't used to. My clothes fit differently, my skin smoother under my fingertips. I even caught a strand of hair brushing against my neck, longer, finer than it should have been. I told myself it was impossible. I told myself mirrors can't curse people, can't rewrite flesh. But denial is a fragile thing. It cracks the moment you see proof in daylight. The proof came one morning when I noticed my reflection moving before I did. I was buttoning my shirt when I saw her in the corner of my eye, the mirror version of me, but her fingers brushed her hair instead of the collar. My body froze, my hands trembling mid-motion. She looked up and smiled. "Why are you fighting me?" she asked. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, like a friend reminding you of something you'd forgotten. I shook my head. "You're not real." She tilted her head, almost playfully. "Neither are you. Not as him." Her words hit me like a bruise. I stumbled backward, knocking a book off my dresser. It landed open on the floor, pages fluttering. I didn't even look to see which one. The mirror rippled faintly, like something breathing behind water. Her hand pressed against it again. But this time, it didn't break through. It only left a print, faint, shimmering, almost like heat. "Who are you?" I whispered. "Why me?" Her expression softened. "Because you wanted to know what it feels like to be seen." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "That doesn't mean I want to be you." She smiled then, sad, knowing. "You already are." The sound of those words stayed in my head all day. They looped over and over as I tried to focus on work, on reality. But every reflective surface seemed to shimmer faintly now, just at the edge of my vision. Windows, water, chrome, all of them showing the faintest flicker of her face instead of mine. That night, I tried something desperate. I dragged the mirror into the hallway and covered it completely with a blanket. I locked my bedroom door and sat against it listening. Hours passed. Silence. My heart slowed, and for the first time in days, I felt almost safe. Until I heard her whisper, right behind me. Not from the mirror. From the other side of the door. "Eli." I turned the handle, terrified, and found the blanket on the floor, the mirror uncovered. My reflection stood there, smiling faintly, lips painted red again. I stepped closer. My pulse thudded in my throat. "What do you want from me?" She looked almost sorry when she said it. "To finish what you started." And before I could respond, her image began to fade, not vanish, but bleed into mine, like two photographs merging. My features softened again. My skin shimmered faintly. The room spun, and I heard a distant echo of her voice, soft, resigned. "You called me when you bought this mirror. You wanted to feel whole. Don't you remember?" I reached for the dresser to steady myself, breathing hard.
No.
"I didn't call for this. I didn't ask for." "You did," she interrupted, and her hand reached toward mine through the glass, her fingers meeting my reflection skin perfectly. "You just didn't know my name." Her voice trembled then, not in anger but sadness. "My name was Alara, and you were me before you forgot." The lights flickered. The room went cold, and when I blinked, the mirror went dark. My reflection, our reflection, was gone. Only my face remained, but I could still hear her whisper in my head, gentle and certain, "You'll remember soon." That night, I dreamed of her again, walking barefoot through a long corridor of mirrors, each one showing a different version of her face. She turned toward me, smiled faintly, and said, "It's not a curse, Eli. It's a return." When I woke, the blanket was gone. The mirror gleamed, and my reflection's eyes were no longer brown. They were green, like hers. The echo of Alara. The days that followed blurred together like smeared paint. Time no longer felt real. Morning light, evening shadows, all blending into the same hollow quiet that filled my apartment. I stopped going to work. I couldn't explain the changes, the strange pull that kept me home, near the mirror. It felt less like an object now, and more like a door I was too afraid and too drawn to close. It began whispering again on the third night. Not in words at first, but in a melody. A faint hum that seemed to come from the silver frame itself. It was the kind of tune that sits behind memory, like something you might have known as a child and forgotten. I sat in the dark, the mirror glowing faintly in the moonlight, and felt it vibrate through my bones. And then came her voice. "Alara," she said softly, as if introducing herself for the first time. "That was my name once."
My throat went dry.
"What are you?" I whispered. "A reflection," she answered. "But not yours. Yours came later." Her figure began to take shape in the glass, slowly, like a photograph developing underwater. I could see her now, clearly for the first time. She looked human, achingly human. Her features were gentle, framed by long hair that shimmered like strands of moonlight. But her eyes, green and hollow at the edges, spoke of centuries. "Where do you come from?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her expression flickered, a faint sadness crossing her face. "From the woman who wanted too much." She stepped closer within the mirror, her hands gliding along the inside of the glass. The surface rippled faintly beneath her touch. "I lived in a time when they said beauty was salvation," she whispered. "When a woman's face could be her prison or her weapon. I begged to be more graceful, more seen, more loved. I sought out a craftsman who claimed he could capture a soul's beauty forever. But he didn't tell me the price." Her reflection dimmed for a heartbeat, and I saw a flicker of something, another world behind her. A candlelit room, old wood floors, a woman standing before the same mirror, her hands trembling as her reflection smiled when she didn't. "The mirror took what I wanted," Alara continued softly. "It took me. I became its prisoner. The beauty I asked for, forever bound to the glass. And the craftsman, he sold it over and over to those who wished for change. To those who looked too long." I stared at her, cold realization crawling up my spine. "And now it's my turn." Her eyes softened.
No.
"You called me because you were ready. You saw yourself in me long before I reached for you. You wanted to become what you already were inside. The mirror only listens. It doesn't create." Her words sank in like slow poison. "So, this isn't a curse?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Only to those who lie to themselves." My chest tightened. The air in the room thickened, humming faintly with the same melody from before. The walls seemed to fade, the space around me rippling faintly as though reality were made of mist. "Alara," I whispered, stepping closer to the mirror. "If I let this happen, what will I become?" She looked at me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then, quietly, "You'll become the truth you keep running from." And for a moment, just a moment, I saw her standing beside me, not inside the mirror, but reflected in the same space. Two figures overlapping, edges blurring, her voice threading through mine like two notes of the same song. "Every reflection holds a memory," she said. "You only have to remember which one is real." The mirror flickered, and the image changed again. I saw flashes, her world bleeding into mine. An old manor, the craftsman's workshop, dozens of mirrors stacked against the walls, each holding faint silhouettes of faces, some pleading, some peaceful, some empty. I reached out, fingertips brushing the surface of the glass, and the hum grew louder, shaking through my bones. "Alara," I shouted. "Tell me how to stop this." Her hand pressed against mine from the other side, and her whisper slid into my ear like breath against skin. "You can't stop what you've already begun. You can only choose how it ends." The mirror went black. My reflection returned, half mine, half hers. And when I blinked, I saw the craftsman standing behind me in the reflection, just for a second, his eyes glowing faintly white, whispering in a voice that wasn't human. Another one remembered. The glass shattered. When I opened my eyes again, dawn was breaking. The mirror was whole, but a faint engraving had appeared at the bottom of the frame, newly etched into the silver. It read, "Elira, the house that remembered." The morning after the engraving appeared, I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. Every surface seemed to hum faintly, the walls breathing in rhythm with my pulse. I packed a bag without thinking, wallet, notebook, phone, nothing else, and left the mirror standing uncovered in my room like a silent witness. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to find the place Alara had shown me in her memories. The manor, the craftsman's workshop, the origin. The antique shop where I'd bought the mirror was still there at the edge of town, dust thick on its windows, the sign faded to a faint ghost of lettering. When I pushed open the door, the same old bell chimed, though the air felt heavier now, denser with a scent of varnish and old wood. The woman behind the counter looked up, startled. Her hair was streaked with gray, her eyes pale as smoke. "You shouldn't have brought that thing home," she said before I'd even spoken. I froze. "You knew what it was?" She hesitated, then sighed, her fingers trembling as she lit a small candle behind the counter. "No one ever listens when I warn them. The mirror chooses who it shows itself to. It's older than you can imagine." "Who made it?" I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the back of the shop, where a heavy curtain swayed faintly, though there was no draft. "A craftsman. Or something pretending to be one. He called himself Malin. Some said he could shape a soul the way others shape glass. But what he made wasn't art, it was traps." She reached under the counter and pulled out a thin, leather-bound book, its cover cracked with age. "These are his records, customers, designs, stories of those who disappeared." She slid it toward me. "Take it. But if you find him, don't look at his face." Her voice faltered on the last word, as if memory itself hurt. I opened the book. Every page was filled with sketches of mirrors, ornate frames curling like vines, inscriptions written in symbols I didn't recognize. Some pages had names, women mostly, a few men, all marked with a single diagonal slash across them. Except one name, written at the end in fresh ink. Elira. My blood ran cold. That name, he wrote it before I came here. The shopkeeper's face went pale. "Then he's waiting for you." The world seemed to tilt again. I stumbled back, gripping the book, and felt something cold brush my wrist. When I looked down, there was a faint mark, the same pattern as the mirror's frame, etched into my skin like frostbite. "Where is the manor?" I asked. She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the window. "You'll find it when night falls. It finds the ones who seek it." I left before she could say more. By the time the sun dipped behind the hills, the road out of town had gone strangely empty. No cars, no birds, no wind, just the sound of my footsteps and the occasional whisper of leaves. The air grew colder with every step. And then I saw it. The manor rose from the fog like something half-remembered. A great, sloping structure of blackened wood and glass, its windows glowing faintly from within though no lights burned inside. The closer I got, the clearer the sound became. A low, melodic hum. The same tune the mirror had sung to me. I pushed open the gate. It groaned like a sigh. The front door was already ajar, and as I stepped through, I felt the air shift, the smell of candle wax, the faint sting of silver polish, and beneath it all, the perfume of roses. The halls were lined with mirrors. Hundreds of them, some cracked, some whole, each one reflecting faint movement even when I stood still. Faces flickered in them, half-formed, watching. "Alara?" I called softly. The hum grew louder, rising and falling like breath. In the distance, down a long corridor, a single door glowed faintly red. I followed it, heart pounding, every mirror I passed rippling as I went by. Shadows leaned toward me, shapes reaching out only to dissolve as I turned my head. When I reached the door, the humming stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. I pushed it open. Inside, the room was filled with unfinished mirrors, frames carved with strange symbols, glass covered in dust sheets. In the center stood a workbench, and on it, a single candle burning blue. Beside it lay a set of tools, gleaming faintly in the dim light. And behind the bench, his silhouette. Malin. He was tall, thin, his outline blurred as though the air around him couldn't decide whether to hold him or let him go. His voice, when it came, was soft but echoing, layered like several people speaking at once. "You've come for her," he said. "They all do." I swallowed hard. "I came to end this." He turned slightly, and though I couldn't see his face, I felt his gaze pierce straight through me. "You can't end what was never separate. You and she are the same reflection seen from different sides." The candle flickered violently, and in its light I saw her, Alara, standing behind him, her eyes filled with tears. "She's trapped," I said. "Let her go." Malin tilted his head. "Then who will you be when she's gone?" Before I could answer, the mirrors in the room began to tremble, glass quivering as if struck by wind. Each surface shimmered with faces, all whispering in unison, voices overlapping into one unbearable sound. "Remember." The candle went out. The world vanished into black. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing before my own mirror back home. The manor was gone. The air was still, but my reflection was smiling. And behind her, in the faint shimmer of silver, the manor still stood, waiting. The shattering hour. I thought I'd escaped that house. I thought the mirror had pulled me back to safety, that I'd woken up in my own apartment. But the moment I looked around, I knew something was wrong. The light was too still. The air had no temperature. And the hum, the same faint vibration from the manor, was still echoing beneath the walls. I turned toward the mirror. It stood exactly where it always had, spotless, silver, motionless. But my reflection was no longer aligned with me. When I moved left, it lagged. When I stepped back, it stepped forward. "Alara?" I whispered. The reflection smiled faintly. "You shouldn't have gone there." I froze. "What happened?" Her eyes flickered, a ripple of green light passing through the glass. "You open the door. Once the door is open, the two worlds can't stay apart for long." The room shifted subtly. The shadows on the walls began to bend in the wrong directions, stretching upward like black vines. The corners darkened, and from somewhere far away, I heard the faint sound of dripping water, steady, rhythmic, impossibly distant. "Alara," I said again, "you have to help me stop this." She stepped closer, her image growing sharper, brighter. There's no stopping a mirror once it remembers both sides. The lights in the room flickered. My phone on the desk vibrated with a dozen notifications at once, messages that read only my name, over and over. Elira. 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 I backed away, trembling. What do you want from me? Her expression softened.
To live.
To finish what neither of us could alone. And then the air cracked. The sound wasn't like glass breaking. It was deeper, more like a heartbeat rupturing through the air. The mirror's surface rippled outward, and the reflections of the room began to move on their own. I watched my own silhouette step away from the wall, turn toward me, and smile a fraction too wide. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the dresser, sending a photo frame crashing to the floor. When I looked down, the picture inside had changed. It wasn't my parents anymore. It was a man I'd never seen before, tall, gaunt, eyes like silver pins. Malin, the craftsman. Behind him, Alara's faint shape blurred in the background, her face half hidden by light. The clock hands moved in reverse. The shadows leaned toward the light. My reflection in the nearest window blinked a second later than I did. Alara, I called softly. Her voice came from everywhere, gentle as wind brushing a curtain. You're in the veil now, the place between what is remembered and what is forgotten. I turned toward the mirror. I turned toward the mirror again, heart hammering. You said I open the door. Then, how do I close it? Alara's reflection looked uncertain. For the first time, I saw fear in her expression. The door closes when the reflection chooses, but it must choose truth. What truth? I shouted. She didn't answer. Her figure flickered, splitting in two, one version of her turning toward me, the other looking away. The air around me buzzed with invisible motion, like the whole apartment was breathing in and out through the mirror's lungs. And then I saw it, the faint shimmer in the doorway. Beyond it, the world didn't look right. My hallway stretched too far, the walls lined with faint silver light. Every reflective surface in sight, from the metal handle to the dark screen of the TV, showed Alara's face instead of mine. She was everywhere now, her expression shifting, pleading. Eli, she said, her voice layered in echoes. Please, don't fight it. You'll break both of us. The walls trembled. A low sound filled the air, like wind pressing through a hollow flute. The mirror began to glow, its silver deepening into a fluid sheen. I felt a pull, gentle at first, then stronger. My body leaned toward it involuntarily, my breath sinking with the hum. And then the boundary gave way. The glass rippled outward like liquid, and a gust of freezing air rushed through the room. My reflection, no, Alara's reflection, stepped out. Not all at once, but in fragments, a hand first, pale and trembling, then a shoulder, then her whole figure, shimmering like mist in moonlight. She was exactly as I'd seen her, delicate, haunted, her dress flowing like smoke. For a moment, she stood there, blinking as if the light stung her. Then she smiled, a fragile, heartbreaking smile. It's been so long, she whispered. I stood frozen, unable to speak. The air around her shimmered faintly with particles of glass dust, the scent of roses filling the room. She looked at me, then at the mirror, then back. The world is folding, she said quietly. The reflection is forgetting which side it belongs to. I could see it now, the walls bending faintly, the furniture trembling between two shapes. Half in this world, half in hers. What happens if it forgets? I asked. Her voice was almost a whisper. Then we both vanish. She reached for me. Her hand hovered inches from mine, trembling. I could feel the cold radiating from her skin. If we join, she said, one of us stays. The choice hung between us like a breath neither of us could take. I looked at her eyes, green, endless, full of a sadness I couldn't name. And in them, I saw not a monster, not a curse, but a reflection of myself I'd been running from. The hum deepened. The walls bent inward. The mirror pulsed once, like a heart. I reached forward. The world split in two. Between the silver veil. When the world split, it didn't shatter. It folded. Light stretched into ribbons that twisted through the air like silk caught in water. The floor beneath me rippled, not breaking but breathing, as if the ground itself were exhaling me into another realm. For a moment I felt weightless. Then the world inverted. Every sound bent backward. The hum I'd heard for days became a song of glass, a melody without words, but filled with grief. When I opened my eyes, I stood on what looked like a reflection of my apartment. Only wrong in the smallest, most terrifying ways was there again, but not trapped, moving freely through the mirrored corridors that stretched beyond. The space behind her wasn't a reflection anymore. It was a whole world of its own. Streets of silver glass, sky made of liquid moonlight, faceless silhouettes drifting like lost thoughts. "What is this place?" I asked. "Our reflection," she answered. "Everything we hide, everything we wish to change, it ends up here." Her eyes glowed faintly, not with malice, but with something mournful. "You weren't cursed, Eli. You were called." I stepped closer, the air trembling like static against my skin. "Called? By who?" "The ones who built the mirrors," she said. "They thought they could trap identity, lock away every side they feared. But reflections remember. They learn. They wait for someone who sees them." Her words echoed through the veil, making the world shimmer. I looked down. My body was fading, half translucent, edges dissolving into light. I could feel her presence in me, like a second heartbeat pulsing beneath my ribs. "Ilara," I whispered, panic rising. "I'm disappearing." She reached out her hand, luminous and trembling. Not disappearing, becoming. The ground beneath us shifted, revealing shapes beneath the glass, figures, hundreds of them, lying still in silver coffins. Their faces were blurred, indistinct, but one by one, they turned their heads toward me. Their lips moved in unison. "Choose." The word sliced through the air like a bell. I stumbled backward. "Choose what?" Her gaze was steady, sorrowful. "To remain in your world as half, or to stay here as whole." The meaning hit me slowly. If I went back, the world would mend, but I'd lose her. The parts of me that saw, that felt, that finally understood what it meant to be complete. If I stayed, I'd be one reflection forever. Ilara's world would claim me, and the human world would forget I ever existed. The air pulsed with silver light, time trembling like a heartbeat between ticks. "Ilara," I said, tears forming before I could stop them. "What happens to you if I go?" She smiled, a real smile, the kind I'd only ever seen in my dreams. "Then I finally rest. Because you saw me." A sound like thunder rolled through the veil, the walls of glass beginning to crack. The two worlds were tearing apart. She reached for me again, desperate now. "Eli, decide." The silver light surged, wrapping around us both. I could feel my pulse syncing with hers, my heartbeat echoing through the veil. The faces in the mirrors leaned closer, whispering fragments of my name, my memories, my fears. I closed my eyes. "I can't lose you." She touched my hand, cold, fragile, alive. "Then don't." The world exploded in white light, the mirror that dreamed of light. When the light faded, silence filled everything. It wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was alive, like the pause between heartbeats before something begins. I opened my eyes, and the world shimmered. The air looked liquid, the color of moonlight poured through crystal. My apartment was still there, but it had changed. The walls breathed with faint ripples of reflection, and every object glowed softly, as if remembering its own story. I stood slowly. My feet left faint traces of silver where they touched the floor, fading a second later. The mirror, no, the veil, stood before me, cracked in delicate spiderwebs that glowed from within. Through those cracks, I could see both sides at once, my world and hers. "Ilara?" I whispered. Her voice came like a sigh from the glass. "I'm here." And she was, not as a ghost, not as a separate shape, but as a shimmer woven through the light itself. When I moved, she moved with me, a presence folded into my breath. The hum that had haunted me for weeks was gone, replaced by a sound like distant wind through chimes. I stepped closer to the mirror, tracing one of its glowing cracks with my fingertip.
It was warm, alive.
Through it I could see the silver streets of her realm now empty, the faceless figures gone. The city of mirrors had gone still, its towers flickering out one by one like candles after a long vigil. "Alara, what happened?" Her voice trembled softly. "It's ending. The veil can't hold both worlds forever. It will become one or none." My throat tightened. "So, did we destroy it?" "No," a pause. "We healed it. Reflections aren't meant to be prisons. They're bridges." The words sank into me like sunlight through water. I realized I could see faint traces of her face overlaying mine in the glass, not as an intrusion, but as if our identities were echoing each other. Two melodies blending into one chord. I turned toward the window. Outside, the city was covered in mist. The glass of nearby buildings shimmered faintly, like the whole world had learned to breathe again. I could see silhouettes of people in their windows, their reflections no longer lagging or trapped. They were moving freely, alive, in rhythm with their real selves. The curse hadn't ended. It had rewritten itself. "Alara," I murmured, "what do we do now?" She didn't answer immediately. When she spoke, her voice carried that same soft wonder I felt. "We live." And as she said it, I felt her laughter, her sorrow, her strength, woven through me like threads of light. The sense of division, the ache of being two halves searching for each other, began to fade. In its place was something whole, something I couldn't define with words, but felt deep enough to make my eyes sting. I walked to the balcony and opened the door. The air was cool and gentle, carrying the scent of rain on metal. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of what I'd see in the glass. I turned toward my reflection in the sliding door, and there we were, both of us, Eli and Alara. We smiled the same smile, and the mirror between us finally stilled, not as a barrier, but as a quiet witness to something that had never been broken, only misunderstood. The hum was gone. The world breathed. The curse had become a promise. And in that shimmering silence, I heard her voice one last time. "Now you know, Eli. You were never cursed to be me. You were blessed to find me." He last reflection. The morning came without warning. When I opened my eyes, the silver glow was gone. My apartment was quiet again, the kind of silence that belongs to sunlight. The cracked mirror still stood before me, but it no longer shimmered. It looked old now, fragile, like something that had been waiting centuries just to rest. For a long while I just stood there, staring at my reflection.
It was me.
But not quite. My eyes held a faint glimmer that hadn't been there before, a soft green hue that caught the light like water over jade. My features were the same, yet somehow different, as if I'd been sculpted back into the version of myself I'd always tried to imagine. "Alara?" I whispered. No answer. Only the soft hum of the world, distant traffic, a bird somewhere near the window. For the first time, I felt alone, and it didn't frighten me. I touched the mirror's surface. It was cool, solid, still. But beneath that stillness, I felt something alive, a pulse, faint and rhythmic, like a sleeping heart beneath glass. Then I noticed it. At the mirror's lower edge, hidden beneath a layer of dust, was an engraving I'd never seen before. The letters were worn, nearly erased by time, but as I brushed my thumb across them, they shimmered briefly in silver light. "Every reflection is a promise made twice." The words sent a quiet ache through me. I understood now it was never about being cursed to be someone else. It was about remembering the parts of myself I'd left behind in every reflection I'd ever feared. Alara hadn't trapped me. She'd called to me because I'd forgotten how to see her, the reflection of who I could become, the soul that had waited patiently behind the glass. The hum returned then, gentle as a heartbeat. And for just a moment, I saw her, standing behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Her eyes were soft, no longer haunted. She looked at peace. "Eli," she whispered, her voice barely more than air, You finished what I couldn't. I turned, but she was gone. Only light remained, scattered like dust in a sunbeam. I stood there, staring at the mirror until the light shifted, and something new appeared. Not a reflection this time, but an image forming deep within the glass, a faint outline of a door, standing in a field of silver mist. And in that mist I saw others. Countless reflections moving in harmony, no longer trapped, no longer fractured. The mirror wasn't just hers. It was one of many gateways built by those who understood that identity, memory, and soul are not separate things, but mirrors of one another. Alara's voice came once more, faint but steady. The mirror doesn't curse. It remembers. When the world forgets who it is, it looks for those brave enough to see. The image faded, and the mirror turned transparent. I could see only my own reflection again, but I smiled this time, genuinely, deeply. The fear that had haunted me since that first night in the manor was gone. Outside, the city gleamed under the morning sun. Glass windows caught the light, scattering it into 1,000 colors. For a moment, I imagined every reflection across the world breathing together, each one holding someone's truth, waiting for them to look close enough. I turned away from the mirror, feeling her warmth still within me, like the echo of a heartbeat shared between worlds. And for the first time, I didn't just feel like I'd survived. I felt like I'd been found. The mirror stayed behind, silent and whole, the faintest shimmer moving through its depths, an endless promise, glowing softly, as if whispering a final word. Remember,